In 1836, a 21-year-old man from Hartford, Connecticut, received a patent for a revolving firearm mechanism that would make him one of the wealthiest industrialists in American history. Samuel Colt did not invent the revolver. The concept of a rotating cylinder that aligned multiple chambers with a single barrel had existed in various crude forms for decades before he was born. What Colt invented was the system of interchangeable parts manufacturing that made the revolver producible at industrial scale, affordable enough for a frontier soldier to carry, and reliable enough for that soldier to trust his life to it. The distinction matters. Colt did not win because his idea was new. He won because he understood that an idea without a manufacturing system is just a sketch on paper. He built the system, and for nearly 2 centuries, the company that carries his name armed American soldiers, won the West, defined the modern assault rifle, filed for bankruptcy twice, lost its most important military contract to a Belgian company, and somehow kept going. This is the story of Colt, the American firearms company that ever existed, and the most American story of rise, ruin, and stubborn refusal to disappear. Samuel Colt's first attempt at building a firearms company failed completely. The Patent Arms Manufacturing Company of Paterson, New Jersey, was established in 1836 and collapsed in 1842. The revolvers were expensive, fragile, and difficult to reload under field conditions. The military showed no interest. The investors pulled out. Colt was 28 years old and bankrupt. He spent the next 5 years inventing other things: an underwater telegraph cable, a naval mine to survive. Then the Mexican-American War began, and Captain Samuel Walker of the Texas Rangers sent Colt a letter. Walker had used the Paterson revolver in combat against Comanche warriors on the Texas frontier and understood both its potential and its failures. He wrote to Colt with a list of improvements. Together they designed a new revolver. The Walker Colt of 1847 was the most powerful handgun in the world at the time, capable of taking down a horse at 100 yards. The U.S. Army ordered 1,000 of them. Samuel Colt was back. He never went bankrupt again. His company would twice, but not while he was alive. The Colt Single Action Army revolver of 1873 became something more than a firearm. It became a cultural object, a symbol so deeply embedded in American mythology that separating the weapon from the legend is almost impossible. The Peacemaker, the gun that won the West. Wyatt Earp carried one, Pat Garrett carried one, Billy the Kid carried one. Every dime novel, every Wild West show, every Hollywood Western that followed enshrined the Colt revolver as the defining artifact of American frontier identity. The company understood what it had. It leaned into the mythology deliberately and built a brand that no competitor could replicate because no competitor had the history to replicate it. Colt was not just selling a firearm, it was selling America's story of itself. The Civil War had already made Colt rich. The company supplied revolvers to both Union and Confederate forces simultaneously, a commercial decision that offended everyone and profited enormously. By the time the frontier era ended, Colt's position as America's premier firearms manufacturer was not a market share statistic. It was a cultural fact. The 20th century brought the design that would define Colt's military legacy for 74 years. John Moses Browning, the same designer who would later partner with F.N. Herstal in Belgium, brought the United States Army a semi-automatic pistol in .45 ACP caliber in 1911. The Army had been searching for a heavier, more powerful sidearm after the .38 caliber revolvers it had issued proved inadequate in the Philippines campaigns of the early 1900s. Browning's design passed the Army's grueling 6,000-round endurance test without a single malfunction. The Colt M1911 was adopted as the standard U.S. military sidearm on March 29, 1911. It would remain in that role for 74 years. 2 world wars, Korea, Vietnam. The M1911 was the pistol American soldiers carried through every major conflict of the 20th century's first 8 decades. Colt manufactured millions of them. The .45 ACP cartridge, the grip angle, the single action trigger, the thumb safety, every element of the M1911 became so deeply familiar to the American military that replacing it felt like an act of cultural vandalism. When the Army finally opened competition for a new sidearm in the 1980s, the backlash from M1911 loyalists inside the military was fierce enough to delay the process for years. Colt did not submit a serious competitor to the XM9 trials. The company assumed the Army would never actually replace the pistol it had carried since 1911. That assumption was wrong. In 1985, the Beretta 92F became the M9. The most iconic American sidearm in history was replaced by an Italian pistol. Colt had not even shown up to fight for it. The M16 should have saved them. In the early 1960s, the Army was searching for a replacement for the heavy full-power M14 rifle. Eugene Stoner had designed a lightweight, small-caliber rifle originally called the AR-15 for the Armalite Company. Armalite was too small to manufacture at military scale. Colt purchased the rights to the design in 1959 for $75,000 and a royalty agreement. The Army adopted a modified version as the M16 in 1964. Through the Vietnam War, Colt manufactured millions of M16s under exclusive government contract. The rifle that American soldiers carried through the jungles of Southeast Asia bore the Colt name on its lower receiver. The M16 became the most widely distributed military rifle in American history, exported to dozens of allied nations, manufactured under license across 3 continents. Colt owned the design, Colt owned the contract. Colt owned the brand association that made the AR-15 the most recognizable rifle in America. It was an industrial monopoly built on a design Colt had not engineered but had possessed the commercial intelligence to acquire. For 2 decades, it was enough. Then the 1980s arrived, and everything Colt had built on institutional inertia began to crack simultaneously. The M1911 was gone, replaced by Beretta. The civilian handgun market was being taken by Glock, a company that had not existed when Colt's dominance began. Labor disputes crippled the Hartford factory in 1986 when workers went on strike for over 4 years. One of the longest strikes in American manufacturing history. Production slowed, quality control suffered, military customers grew frustrated. The AR-15 patent that had protected Colt's civilian market exclusivity expired in 1977, opening the design to competitors who could manufacture it cheaper, faster, and without the labor troubles that plagued Hartford. By 1992, the pressure had built past the breaking point. Colt filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. The company that had armed the Union Army, that had put revolvers on the frontier, that had supplied American soldiers through 2 world wars, was insolvent. It reorganized. It survived. It returned to production. The M4 carbine, a shorter, lighter variant of the M16 family that Colt patented in 1994, gave the company a new foothold. The Army adopted it as its standard individual weapon. Colt held the manufacturing contract through the 1990s and into the 2000s. Afghanistan and Iraq meant enormous demand. Colt was producing again at scale. The recovery seemed real. It was not permanent. When Colt's M4 patent expired, the contract it had protected expired with it. The Army opened competition. FN Herstal, the Belgian manufacturer that had been manufacturing weapons for the U.S. military since the 1980s, submitted a lower bid and won. In 2013, Colt lost the M4 contract, the contract that had been the financial spine of the company for nearly 20 years. Sales of civilian rifles fell 30%. Cash reserves dwindled to $11 million by May 2015. On June 14, 2015, Colt Defense filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection for the second time. A company that had been manufacturing firearms since 1836, that had armed both sides of the Civil War, put the peacemaker in the hands of every gunfighter the American frontier produced, and supplied American soldiers through every major conflict of the 20th century, could not make its bond payments. The Belgian company that Colt had once dismissed as a foreign interloper had taken its most important contract. The Austrian company that had not existed when Colt's golden era began had taken its police market. The Italian company that had replaced the M1911 had held the American military sidearm contract for 30 years. Colt emerged from its second bankruptcy in 2016 under new ownership. It secured a share of a new M4 contract alongside FN in 2018. It won an $88 million Army contract for M4 variants. The company is still operating. The name is still on the receiver. The Single Action Army revolver is still in production, the same basic design that Wyatt Earp carried in 1881, still manufactured in Hartford, still sold to collectors and enthusiasts who understand that they are buying not just a firearm but a piece of American mythology that no bankruptcy proceeding has managed to extinguish. That is Colt's real legacy. Not the M1911, though the M1911 is extraordinary. Not the M16, though the M16 armed a generation of American soldiers. The real legacy is the proof that a name embedded deeply enough in a nation's identity can survive mismanagement, labor disputes, lost contracts, foreign competition, and 2 separate insolvencies and still be worth fighting over. Samuel Colt died in 1862 at the age of 47, having built one of the largest private manufacturing facilities in the world, and died one of the wealthiest men in America. He did not build a company designed to last forever. He built a name. The name outlasted everything else. It still does.